This list is incomplete. You can help by expanding it. This is a list of designated terrorist groups by national governments, former governments and intergovernmental organizations, where the prescription has a significant effect on the group's activities. Many organizations that are accused of being a terrorist organization deny using terrorism as a military tactic to achieve their goals, and there is no international consensus on the legal definition of terrorism. This listing does not include unaffiliated individuals accused of terrorism, which are considered under lone wolf terrorism. This list also excludes groups that might be widely considered terrorist, but who are not officially so designated according to the criteria specified above. This list is not all-inclusive. For more inclusive lists, including people, entities, and specific vehicles, refer to lists under process of designation. Organizations currently officially designated as terrorist by various governments. The list includes references to organizations associated with Al-Qaeda by the United Nations. Organizations officially designated as terrorist in the past. Below is the list of organizations that have officially been designated as terrorist in the past, by the respective parties, but have since been delisted. Process of designation. Among the countries that publish a list of designated terrorist organizations, some have a clear established procedure for listing and delisting, and some are opaque. The Berghoff Foundation argues that opaque delisting conditions reduce the incentive for the organization to abandon terrorism, while fueling radicalism. Australia. Since 2002, the Australian government maintains a listing of terrorist organizations as per the Security Legislation Amendment Act 2002. Listing, delisting and relisting follows a protocol that mainly involves the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation and the Attorney General's Department. Canada. Since December 18, 2001. Section 83.05 of the Canadian Criminal Code allows the Governor-in-Council to maintain a list of entities that are engaged in terrorism, facilitating it, or acting on behalf of such an entity. Entities are reviewed by the Minister and the Chief Justice of the Federal Court, and finally published in the Canada Gazette. The list is also published on the website of Public Safety Canada. European Union. The European Union has two lists of designated terrorist organizations that provide for different sanctions for the two groups. The first list is copied from the United Nations, and the second is an autonomous list. Autonomous list all other designated organizations. The freezing of all funds, other financial assets and economic resources. A ban on directly or indirectly making funds, other financial assets and economic resources available. It is important to note that sanctions are only applicable to EU external groups regardless of designation. For example, 47 groups are listed as terrorist organizations in the EU, but sanctions are only applied to 27 of these. Member states do have an obligation to assist each other in preventing and combating terrorist acts, but this is the only action that follows from the designation of an EU internal organization. European Union list of terrorist groups and individuals. The 25th of June 2012. Listing process. New organizations are added to the autonomous list following this process. Designation. Member states and third-party states tips about an organization. This state must have solid evidence and the tip must be sent by the national authority. Scrutinity. The presidency, or a delegation, gathers basic information, and might require more information from the tipping state. Consultations. Information is shared with other member states for discussion. Everything is still confidential. 15 days after, delegates of the states meet as the CP 931 Working Party. Europol is sometimes invited to. Recommendation. The CP 931 Working Party prepares the listing decision. Decision by EU Council. The Council adopts the list. The decision must be unanimous, which means that every state has a veto right. Official publishing. In the EU Official Journal, notification and statement of reason. The Council Secretariat notifies each designated organization via mail, together with instructions on how to get the decision to be reconsidered. Delisting process. The EU has similar process to review the list, and to remove organizations for the list. India. Under the Unlawful Activities Act, the Ministry of Home Affairs maintains a list of banned organizations. List of organizations banned by the Government of India. People's Republic of China. The Ministry of Public Security maintains a list of terrorist organizations on its website mps.gov.cn. This list has been translated to English by the Embassy of the People's Republic of China in the USA at www.china-embassy.org. Philippines. The first group to be officially listed as a terrorist organization under the Human Security Act of 2007 is the Abu-Sayyaf on September 10, 2015 by the Basilan Provincial Court. Russia. Single federal list of organizations recognized as terrorists by the Supreme Court of the Russian Federation. The National Anti-Terrorism Committee maintains a list of terrorist organizations on its website nac.gov.ru, which named as Federal United List of Terrorist Organizations. Ukraine. In Ukraine, the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics are classified as terrorist organizations. Ukrainian authorities claim that the two organizations are made up of a rigid hierarchy, financing channels and supply of weapons with the purpose of deliberately propagating violence, seizing hostages, carrying out subversive activity, assassinations, and the intimidation of citizens. United Nations. The United Nations does not have a general list of all terrorist organizations. Instead, it has several lists focusing on a particular context. UN 1267 Regime List. The UN 1267 Regime List is focused on Al-Qaeda, the Taliban and their associates. Prohibition of sale or transfer of arms and related materiel. The freezing of funds and other financial assets or resources. The prevention of entry onto or transit through the territories of member states. A prohibition on provision of technical assistance or training in military matters or in the manufacture or maintenance of arms and related materiel. The EU provides exceptions to the implementation of relevant asset freezing sanctions per UN Resolution 1452. Upon request, a competent national authority may determine to release funds on the following grounds if, within the time limit provided for, there has been no objection made, or a release has been explicitly approved by the UN Sanctions Committee, necessary to cover basic expenses intended for the payment of professional fees for legal services or for the payment of fees or services in relation to the maintenance of frozen funds or assets necessary for extraordinary expenses. United Kingdom. United Kingdom governments prescribe terrorist groups. Text of the Terrorism Act 2000 is in force today within the United Kingdom, from the UK Statute Law Database. United States. United States State Department List of foreign terrorist organizations. Terror Exclusion List. Executive Order 13224 blocking terrorist property and a summary of the terrorism sanctions regulations. Terrorism List. Governments Sanctions Regulations, and Foreign Terrorist Organizations Sanctions Regulations. U.S. Department of the Treasury, Office of Foreign Assets Control. What you need to know about U.S. sanctions. U.S. Department of State Terrorist Designation Lists. U.S. Department of State Country Reports on Terrorism 2008. United States Department of State. Individuals and entities designated by the State Department under EO 13224. Retrieved 17 July 2011. U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Terrorist Organization Reference Guide January 2004. Yugoslavia and Serbia. The Yugoslav and Serbian authorities regarded the Kosovo Liberation Army as a terrorist group.